Hello, I'm Richard Sousa from the Hoover Institution. My Hoover colleagues, Rick Hanushek and Paul Peterson, both senior fellows at the Hoover Institution and members of Hoover's Correct Task Force on K-12 education, recently spoke about the Flores decision, a Supreme Court decision dealing with public school financing. Let's listen in.
Well, Rick, there's a big case out, Horne versus Flores, which may be the biggest case on school expenditures since the old Rodriguez case back in 1973. And I understand you had a lot to do with the decision there. So what did the court decide?
Well, this was actually a case in federal courts about how to provide education for English language learners. The original Rodriguez case was trying to get the issue of equal spending across districts into the federal courts. And in 1973, the Supreme Court decided that that was not a matter of the federal Constitution. But as you know, this led to 45 of the 50 states having challenges under their own state constitutions about spending.
So now we have a new federal case, and this time it's a federal law, 1974, saying you've got to have equality for those who don't speak the English language. And that's been interpreted by some state judges, some lower court judges, federal judges who say, well, you got to spend money up to the level where it will bring up students up to the same level as other students. So you thought those were bad decisions in the lower courts and filed an amicus brief along with others, challenging that interpretation.
Absolutely. The law says they have to provide appropriate services so that English language learners can participate in the rest of schooling. And that's a good goal, of course. But the lower courts only wanted to take into account how much was spent on these students and not whether they were learning anything. The challenge was from the state of Arizona that said we had to pay attention to the fact that kids are learning more. We've changed the way we do English language instruction and so forth. Now, this has great parallels in our state school finance cases. The state school finance cases have moved away from just equality of spending to cases that are called adequacy cases. And there the whole issue is how much money are you spending on the schools?
So how did the Supreme Court find out what you guys were up to and what your arguments were? I know you filed an amicus brief, but there's a broader discussion as well.
Well, the amicus brief actually was easy to put together because it fell out of a book that Al Linseth and I have done called Schoolhouses, Courthouses, and State Houses. That book is all about how to both get our schools working in a better direction, but also the role of the courts. And in that book, we had analyzed some of the big state decisions, New Jersey, Wyoming, Kentucky, where the courts had ruled that substantial and big amounts of money should be put into the schools. And after you look at it, you find out that the students were not any better off after they had all this money than before.
So what you say is money isn't enough. It's got to be more than money if you're going to do it. And you can't just order more money and think you're going to solve the problem. Besides that, the courts shouldn't be saying that in the first place. That's not their job. Is that more or less your argument?
That's pretty much. I mean, there is this constitutional separation where the legislatures are supposed to appropriate money and not the courts. But more importantly, the courts haven't done a good job at it. The only place where one of these court decisions was related to better performance was Massachusetts, your own home state. And there, it wasn't just money, but they did substantial other things of better exit exams, fine-tuned accountability, and a whole series of other policies. And there, if you do other things, you get the results.
So what's going to happen to this case now that the Supreme Court has said, we don't think the lower court decision is right? Is this in the dispute?
Well, not at all, because Supreme Court decisions on federal matters aren't binding to the individual states. On the other hand, the states that have been looking at these cases are themselves getting wary about whether they're doing anything, and this well-argued decision could well be very influential.
Well, we found the same thing in our analysis of what was going on at the state level. The courts had begun to shift, and I think we see this U.S. Supreme Court turning with a larger trend, raising some questions about whether just spending more money is the only way we can improve our educational system. So anyhow, it's great talking with you, Rick.
It's excellent, and you should also mention the Education Next issue that's just coming out that has a synopsis of the discussion on both sides in it.